Hi everyone. Let's take a moment and work through problem P2-2A, which appears on the screen, and it's one where we'll prepare and post journal entries. Okay, the problem appears at the top. Denzel Brothers opens a web consulting business called Venture Consultants and completes the following transactions in March. Now, the first thing we have to do on this problem, and in fact the only thing I'm going to walk you through in this multimedia presentation, is how to make the journal entries. So I'm only going to tackle part one of this problem. Okay, Brooks invested $150,000 cash along with $22,000 of office equipment in his business, and this took place on March 1st. So why don't we just start off and type in March 1, and he invests, let's see, $150,000 of cash, so we know we're going to have a debit to cash because cash increases with a debit, right? $150,000. You know what? I want to format both of these so that we can. I'll use whole dollars, and we'll get a comma appearing. And then he also invests $22,000 in office equipment, so we'll record that. And so the total amount what do we say here? The total amount is the sum of those. So I'll just sum both of those. And let's see if I can make this column a little bit wider. And then we can shrink this one back so everything will look just fine on the screen. Okay, $172,000. And that credit would go to an account called D. Brooks Capital, and we need to indent that because that's the credit, right? And not only do we need to indent that, give me a minute here and just line this up a little bit better, we would then want to write some description. So we would say something like, I like to start these with to record owner investment. Something like that. Okay, next entry is on the 2nd. And if you read that, it said prepared $6,000 cash for 6 months rent for an office. So we'll put a 2 in there, and it gives us a hint. Debit prepaid rent for $6,000. Okay, well that makes it real easy. So prepaid rent is an asset. We're recording this first as an asset for $6,000. If we prepaid it, that meant we must have paid it with cash. So we'll type in cash, and then we will write here, let me indent this first. And I would then say to record 6 months cash, something like that, of rent. Something like that, 6 months of rent, and we've got the debits and credits. Okay, so now I'm going to scroll a little bit. Let's go a little bit more. So now we're on the 3rd, right? And on the 3rd, it says, made credit purchases of office equipment for $3,000 and office supplies for $1,200. Payment is due within 10 days. Okay, well, if we made a purchase on credit, that usually means that accounts payable was involved. Always with the entries, do the easy part first. So office equipment looks like increased by $3,000, right? And we can fill that in, and because office equipment is an asset, it increases with a debit. The next item we have on this compound entry, which means there's more than just a single debit and credit, is an increase in office supplies, $1,200. And since we paid it for credit, then that means we must have had a credit. I'm going to indent now to accounts payable, which is the account we use to pay vendors for items paid with credit, and we'll pay for it in cash in some period of time, in this case 10 days. So we've got a credit of $4,200, and we will say something like to record purchased equipment and supplies made on credit. Now that'd be a very complete description, but you typically do put a description in the journal, in the general journal. Okay, let me slide again, and we'll now tackle the transaction on the 9th. Though I'm running out of room here. Tell you what, why don't I hide this? I'm going to go up to group and group this, and then I can shrink that down. We can move this over a little bit, move this over a little bit. Yeah, that gives us a little bit of screen real estate, and we'll handle the entry on the 6th. The entry on the 6th said completed services for a client and immediately received $4,000 in cash. Okay, so we need to increase cash. Cash increases with a debit like all other assets, and we must have done some kind of services. So the credit would go to an account called services revenue. It might be consulting revenue. It sort of depends on the nature of the business, but I'll call it services revenue. I need to indent that, and then I will say to record services billed to a client, something like that. Not real critical. You just want some kind of description of what happened. Okay, then we'll take a look at the next transaction. Okay, I'm going to slide a little bit so we got a little bit more room. The next transaction takes place on the 12th. Try to keep this on the screen now. And the transaction on the 12th says paid $4,200 cash to settle the account payable created on March 3rd. Okay, so we know we're going to pay off that $4,200, so I'll just reference the cell. I'm going to go equal to cell J33 rather than type it in. And that also means I need to debit accounts payable, which reduces it, right? And I'm just doing the equals instead of retyping it, referencing the cell C33 where I had that. A little bit of accounting tricks here. And then I'm going to credit cash, and again I'll do the equal there, indent it. And now we're going to lose the transaction to write the description, which is okay. And I will say on the 12th to pay balance due on account. And I do need to put that 4,200 in. Again, my equals and my 4,000. I missed that from before, so there we've got it put in. All the debits equal the credit on every entry. Okay, after the 12th we have an entry on the 19th. And now I'm going to have to split the screen a little bit more. So let me adjust this, and what I will do is create a group, let's say down to here. I go to the data menu, group, and then I'll shrink those groups. And now we've got a little bit of real estate to work with. And I'm going to shrink this again so you can see more of the screen. Okay, so on the 19th, it says paid $5,000 cash for a premium on 12-month insurance policy. Okay, well in this case, I'm going to do cash first because it's the easy side, right? Do the easy side first if that works for you. It's credit to cash of 19th is $5,000, and the debit goes to a 12-month insurance premium. So much like we handled office supplies, we recognize that the time we make this purchase we have an asset, and that asset is prepaid insurance. Okay, and we make that for $5,000. The last thing we need to do is say the entry to record cash paid for insurance. Something like that. Okay, next we'll tackle the entry on the 22nd. Okay, on the 22nd, I'll slide a little bit again. We received $3,500 cash. I'll put the dollar amount in, and I know it's a debit to cash. I'll just reference that cell as partial payment for the work completed on the 9th. Well, if I slide back, I've got that hidden. Let me undo this, but if we slide back up to the 9th, on the 9th. Maybe I read that wrong. Let me take a look again. Completed on March 9th. Did I enter the wrong date? Looks like I missed a transaction. I went from the 6th to the 12th. We need to put that 7500 project in there. So let's do that. Let's just open this up for a couple rows. We'll do an insert, and I'm going to need one more. And we'll say on the 9th we had an entry completed to 7500 for a client who must pay within 35 days. Okay, well I know I've got a debit to 7500. The easy part is to record the sale, which is to services revenue. Could be consulting revenue, something like that. The debit goes to accounts receivable, which is the account we use to recognize money that's owed to us that will be paid to us in the future. And then I'll just put the last comment in on the 9th is to record services billed to a client. Okay, so we had one above, and now we've got one on the 6th and the 9th. Okay, now that we've got that, let's go ahead and tackle that entry on the 22nd, which was a debit of 3,500 cash in payment of the services that occurred on the 9th. So all we would have is a debit to cash and a credit to accounts receivable. So I'll reference the accounts receivable, and I'll indent it, and I will say to record cash collected on account. Something like that. And we'll credit the 3,500. And the next entry occurs on the 25th. So let's read it, and then I'll put it down below. Okay, the 29th, Brooks withdraw 5,100 cash for personal use. So I'll slide up, and we'll work that one. So we know he used cash, so we're going to credit cash, and I'll put it in the second position, the second row, because you normally record debits first and credit second. And the dollar amount of that cash on the 29th was, what was the number amount? 5,100. Okay, so $5,100. This time I'll just type it in. And we would typically use an account that's called the owner's name in a withdrawal account. So we would say D. Brooks withdrawals. And that's considered his withdrawals account, which is a contra owner's equity account, because it normally has a debit balance, where the rest of owner's equity has a credit balance. And we will say to record owner's withdrawal of cash. Something like that. Slide back up. On the 30th, I'm reading to the left of the mouse now, purchase $600 of additional office supplies on credit. Okay, so on the 30th, we have more office supplies to record. Office supplies are a short-term asset, a current asset, if you will. And the dollar amount we purchased was $600. I'll just type it in. And the credit then would be, it said on account, so again we're going to use accounts payable. We will indent that, and we will say to record office supplies purchased on account. And I'll move it down one line. Okay, and then our final transaction is paid $500 cash for this month's utility bill. So let's give that one a shot. And what I will do is I will say we're going to use an account called utilities expense. So I'll type that in, utilities expense. And we paid for it with cash. I'll type in cash, and I'll type in, over here I'll type in, to record the monthly utility Okay, so then I'll indent this one. And the dollar amount of the utility expense was $500 from above. And that should take care of all the entries that we have on part A of this problem. Okay, so I'll expand this again, and I'll slide down so that you can see we worked every one of those transactions. I'm scrolling. This might scramble your screen a little bit, I apologize. But if you need to go review any of these, just pause the multimedia presentation as you need to. And again, you can fast forward it or watch it again as well. Okay, I hope you found that beneficial, everyone. Thank you.